My family at some point started an informal Thanksgiving Day tradition, back when most of us, 5 out of 7, were still young and single. My mother would invite us over for a fully loaded turkey lunch. Yes, it was a lunch because she always had to work on Thanksgiving Day and would leave the house by 2 o'clock. Nurses were needed every day of the year, and I think this was a trade off to free up Christmas Eve. We feasted on turkey, yams, potatoes, and many other delicious dishes. And after chatting for hours and enjoying pies and desserts later in the afternoon, the married siblings would leave around 4 to 5 o'clock and head to the in laws for Thanksgiving dinner. The rest of us would then vote on what movie to see. With mom gone, it wasn't rude for us to leave, and the theaters were all open and had few people. It was the only time in the year we all got to go to the movies together. There were even some years when dad came along too. Today, my mother is retired. My father and one brother have passed away, and more of us kids are married or live farther away. So, although Thanksgiving is still celebrated, the movie tradition ended due to simple logistics. But it was on one of these holiday outings in 1989 that we decided to just go to a nearby single screen theater and watch whatever was playing that day. It was an underwater science fiction film that none of us had heard of called The Abyss. It turned out to be a film that left such an impression on me that I would remember it vividly for years afterward, along with the odd circumstances under which I discovered it. The Abyss was both written and directed by James Cameron, halfway between his first two Terminator movies and 3 years after Aliens. Given the quality of the film and the reputation of its creator, I am still amazed at how little attention it ever received. One thing I share with Cameron is a love for the ocean and its underwater inhabitants. As a lifelong swimmer and now scuba diver, I have always loved watching underwater filming. This movie is set almost entirely beneath the ocean. It is definitely a Cameron film. What do I mean? For one, it is long, like Titanic. Its original runtime was 3 hours, but the studios had it cut back to 2.5 hours. Second, it includes lessons about mankind's mistakes, similar to Avatar or Terminator, though these parts were completely removed from the theatrical version. Third, it is a well-crafted story, masterfully told. Fourth, it contains plenty of suspense to keep you on the edge of your seat. Fifth, it featured phenomenal sets, like Titanic. Sixth, it pushed the envelope of film and special effects technology for its time, like all the above. Do I rest my case? It also has several credibility issues, which are always among the big weak points in Cameron's sci-fi ventures. The story explores several advanced underwater technologies. The first is the concept of a submersible oil rig. The rig sits at the ocean floor under 2,000 feet of water. It features sealed control rooms and living quarters. It can be detached and towed, hovering above the seabed with a small deep-sea submersible to change drilling sites. Since it supposedly takes 3 weeks to depressurize at those depths, the only way to allow open dive operations is to maintain the air pressure inside the rig equal to the surrounding water pressure. This is the first major credibility issue. The deepest recorded open water dive is just over 1,000 feet, and the diver suffered severe HPNS, high pressure nervous syndrome. Although this is mentioned in the film, only one character actually suffers from it, while the others go weeks without showing any symptoms. At the end, Bud is supposed to dive to depths over 17,000 feet and experience nothing worse than temporary disorientation. I'm sure at that depth, he would be toast in no time, even if breathing liquid. A more serious départ. The problem is that you can't actually breathe air at that hyperbaric pressure because of oxygen and nitrogen toxicity. So the air in the cabins would have to be mixed with a carefully balanced amount of low oxygen and helium or other substitutes. This can be achieved by a controlled feed from a tank, but achieving it throughout an entire cabin may prove impossible due to the gases separating. Also, if the pressure in the cabins and subs is equal to the surrounding water, leaks would be a slightly smaller problem than shown in the movie, because the water would only rise to the level of the leak, not fill the cabin like it does in a submarine. Another experimental technology, which is partly real, is the use of hyperoxygenated fluid to allow deeper dives without a hard suit. High pressure compresses the air in the lungs, making it impossible to breathe at excessive depths. If you could breathe liquid instead, the compression problem disappears. The film actually demonstrates a rat breathing this hyperoxygenated fluid, but it has only been tried on humans in clinical settings where a pump assists the breathing process. A major problem is that there's no easy way to expel carbon dioxide from the lungs without machine assistance. So the free breathing of the fluid shown in the film is probably not realistic. However, it's a really neat idea. The production of the film must have been an absolute nightmare, which has been acknowledged by the director, cast, and crew. The diving scenes were actually filmed in a flooded grain silo with the set built inside it. Actual ROVs, remote operated vehicles, were incorporated into the plot and featured frequently. Submersibles and other more difficult shots were done with miniatures that somehow had live action film seamlessly integrated, so it appeared as if you were looking at real people inside the craft from outside in the water. And the famous ILM operation provided some very beautiful CGI renderings of the NTIs, which stands for non-terrestrial intelligence. This was a central part of the plot and another very original idea to add to the annals of science fiction. I don't know of any other film that was built around the idea of an intelligent race of beings that evolved in parallel with humans on Earth, but never made contact because they live exclusively in the unexplored regions of deep ocean trenches. Their technology is based on the control of water, which is also quite a stretch. Cameron takes great liberty with the idea that aliens are allowed to magically perform whatever impossible feats the story requires. There is one scene where the aliens supposedly investigate the rig using a column of water that can suspend in midair and bend around corners. It is a touching moment and looks really cool, but that's about it. Seeing the film for the first time is quite an experience, as there are so many scenes involving heart-stopping suspense. There is tension between the oil rig crew and the Navy SEAL team sent down to assist the rescue operation, which involves an armed nuclear warhead and a paranoid team leader made so by an HPNS affliction. An example of the crazy pace is when a hurricane develops at the surface, and the underwater crew need to unhook the cable to the topside ocean liner so it can leave. This requires an external operation with the mini-sub, but the SEAL team has taken the sub for a secret mission, and so they don't get to the cable in time. The storm drags the ship liner off position, and the attached rig begins sliding toward the bottomless trench they are parked next to. Before this problem develops further, the tension in the cable causes the crane up top to break off in a spectacular crash scene. The rig below is warned that the huge crane is coming down toward them. We see the thick cable outside the rig window coiling as more of it hits the bottom and the pursing. The crane gets closer. It is a very effective moment of suspense as the camera stays inside the cabin with the crew throughout the entire brace for impact. The crane narrowly misses the rig when it hits, but while the crew is still cheering, the crane slowly falls over the edge of the trench, and we now see the cable following it down, still attached to the rig. You barely have time to breathe, so to speak. Probably the most unique feeling I took away was an intense sense of claustrophobia created by some excellent direction. Cameron ensures you hardly see the surface for most of the film. You get a really tangible feel of what it is like to actually work under 2,000 feet of water for days continuously. Many scenes show people diving through tight compartments, getting trapped in rooms quickly filling with water, and you can often hear the characters breathing or struggling to. This, I believe, is one of the film's more remarkable achievements. Considering the Cold War setting, part of the story also depends on a Russian scare and concern that our nuclear submarine technology is vulnerable to espionage. Ironically, the Cold War era ended suddenly just a few months after the film's release, when the Berlin Wall fell. It's amusing to see the USSR portrayed in 1994, 5 years after it was actually dissolved. There is a cheesy, yet convincingly told romantic subplot between the two married main characters who go from the verge of divorce to rediscovering their connection. Ed Harris is well cast and performs the role effectively, and the musical score is quite lovely as well. With all that and more packed in, what else could you possibly want?